BEN Uniswap committee discussion. Happy to have you all here. So today we're briefly just going to run through the purpose of the committee. Well, first we're going to do some introductions, then we're going to do a brief review of the BEN Meta-Delegate and the overall purpose of that governance structure. Some pending applications that we have currently. We're really excited to talk about that really briefly. Then we'll dive into a little bit of the committee goals and what we'll be doing moving forward with this committee, and then a quick review on Uniswap and compound proposals. And we're really excited to get into that discussion as well, because we think it's going to give everybody a good idea on how the Uniswap governance and the compound governance structure operate. So with the intro, I'm Jeremy Guzman. I'm the head of tech here at BEN. We have Eric Pinos and Kate and Antonio, who are a part of the core team at the Blockchain Education Network. And we have chapter members from all over the world that are part of BEN as well. And we're really excited to have everybody here. So with that being said, I'm going to pass it along to Eric so we could kind of discuss the BEN delegate governance structure as well as our pending applications.
All right, thank you, Jeremy. So welcome to everyone here. We got a lot of great people, and we have students from all over the world, our club leaders from all over the world. Just some examples. I see Neil from MIT Bitcoin Club, Christian from Harvard. We got Jake from Leeds. We have a bunch of students from BEN Turkey. We have Bilgi blockchain, and I see as well the Mateo from University of the Andes. So it would be a lot to kind of go around and do the attendance, but if you can post in the chat, your name is already there, but just post like, hey, my name is so-and-so, and I'm from so-and-so university and club. That way we have the records for our minutes so we can see like exactly where everyone is from and what universities are represented on this call and what countries are represented on this call. That would be very helpful. So if you guys can do that now while I'm talking about the Uniswap Meta-Delegate. So the Uniswap Meta-Delegate, we started this last week. And so it's very new. And basically it was based off of this idea of having representation for universities in the Uniswap voting process. So what we noticed was, initially started out as helping clubs set up their own delegate, which is something that we're still doing. But what we realized when we were doing this is that there are some commitments to setting up a delegate. It's a great way for students to get involved. It's a really great initiative. However, it becomes an issue when students have to meet monthly for it. They have to do these governance calls. They have to know how to do it, right? There's a certain level of knowledge that's needed. So what we kind of come in to do is we help be the training wheels for these clubs to set up their delegates by having an intercollegiate delegate. And so the intercollegiate delegate is for students to be involved in from different clubs to participate in voting, get their feet wet with understanding like how governance works for a DeFi project, how governance works for DAOs, and practice reviewing proposals, commenting, giving feedback. And there's a level of accountability that like, hey, I just have to show up, once a month to this thing. We also experiment with the meta part. So like with meta governance, this idea of, well, let's give everyone a vote within the network. And the way that we accomplish that is through basically this. So the way that this infographic is laid out, the way that the Uniswap governance process, you see that people submit a proposal to the community about Uniswap. And so what we do as the BEN Uniswap committee is we meet and we discuss it and we review it and we learn about it so that we make informed decisions. And then we write a report or we write a recap and a summary about how we feel about this proposal. And so then that gets sent out to every university chapter that BEN has all over the world. And from the university chapters, we'll be giving every university chapter one vote in our delegates. So as the university chapters vote, then the vote gets aggregated, and if it's a majority for or majority against, that's the way that BEN will vote in the Uniswap proposal. So by doing this, we're able to give representation to smaller universities that don't already have their own delegate and don't have the resources to set up their own delegate, but they still want to be involved in the Uniswap governance process. And so this is a really exciting initiative. We're working with a couple of VC firms to get this off the ground. We're working with Uniswap, and we've gotten a lot of support from them to kind of grow this initiative. And our hope is, not that everything is done through the BEN delegate, but more so that the BEN delegate is a great way to give smaller universities representation and to get the larger universities going with the training wheels of how this is done, so that when they're ready, then they can launch their own delegate, and we help them launch their own delegate as well, especially for internationally, like in other countries, in our schools that we have in other countries. For example, we translated this graphic already, or rather I should say BEN Turkey translated this graphic already into Turkish. And the entire announcement blog post that we made has already been translated into Turkish. So our hope with this is that we're able to take it across borders as well. And these calls, so you'll see that the structure of this call is the first half is in English as we do all of this discussion. And then the second half, we're going to have breakout rooms within the Zoom call using Zoom's breakout room feature, and it'll be in different languages. So you'll be able to speak in your native language to recap what was talked about, and so that everyone's on the same page. Then we'll reconvene at the end. And normally, if there's a vote to be cast, we would cast the vote at the end of the call. If not, then we just focus on discussion and we focus on learning and feedback. So Jeremy, is that everything you wanted me to cover?
Yep, that's perfect. So now let's transition into some pending applications that we have currently with A16Z and the Uniswap grant. I'll let you touch on that as well before we transition into the overall goal of this committee.
Yeah, so as I mentioned, we're working with A16Z to connect them with clubs and to the clubs that want to set up their own delegates, so that they'd be able to connect with them and connect with other groups as well that can offer that support beyond what BEN can offer. So that would come in many different forms like mentorship and voting power. Same thing with Uniswap, as we're talking to them about more support from them for the clubs and for the BEN delegate. So lots of stuff that can come from that.
Perfect. So yeah, so now to kind of go into the committee goals. Now, the overarching goal here is to provide organizations with an ample amount of opportunity to participate in the Uniswap governance. And we're proud to say that, because with that being said, we could also create a cohesive community in that. So with the implementation of the Meta-Delegate, or the Meta governance, I should say, we can now participate in the voting process, and now we could thoroughly review Uniswap proposals and give everybody a good understanding of what exactly it takes to one, understand what a proposal entails and how it's created, and how can one actively engage in the Uniswap governance community, right? So all that entail, we can also stimulate engagement amongst all of our worldwide chapters. We think it's a great opportunity for everybody to start discussing amongst themselves, both domestically and internationally. We think it's a great team building activity in a sense, and we're really looking forward to see what we could kind of build out from there. And then lastly, of course, is we just want to educate everybody about decentralized governance. We have to remember that this is a very nascent effort. It's up and coming, and it has shown a lot of support, or has been given a lot of support from the crypto community. And we think that BEN, as a holistic universal community as we are, we're ripe for the opportunity in kind of building this thing out. And that's exactly what this committee will do. And I'm personally excited to see what's to come of it. Now we're going to go into some proposal examples, both on Uniswap and Compound, two of which is primarily the Uniswap grant proposal and the Compound grant proposal, both of which are very structured similarly, as you're going to see in just a moment. And from there, we'll go into our breakout rooms. Everybody can ask some questions on what was previously discussed. and then we'll kind of get back together and wrap it up and see what everyone thinks of the committee and what we could do moving forward. So just give me one quick second. Let me share my screen, my desktop screen. Can everyone see my screen?
Yep.
Perfect. Yeah. Perfect. So here we have the Uniswap grant proposal on the Uniswap forum. So the forum is pretty much just a community board that allows people, a discussion board that allows people to just submit a potential concept or idea that they'll like to roll out with, and stimulate conversation amongst the community. There's consistent updates. As you can see, this started in December. The Uniswap grant program V.01 started back in December of 2020, and the conversation is still ongoing. The last comment was 5 days ago. So that's really interesting, because now that shows that there's community involvement and there's a curiosity in what people have to say. So with that being said, and how we could thoroughly analyze proposals moving forward to see whether or not we could vote on them, and we could decide on whether we're for or against some of its proposals. So with this one in particular is the grant proposal that allows community members to acquire uni voting power to then further participate in the Uniswap governance. So it's a very interesting structure. And yeah, Eric, do you have any comments on this as of now, or anyone?
Yeah, I think that the way to think about this is that, so Uniswap is a decentralized exchange, right? And they have hundreds of millions, I think billions of transaction volume that really, this is the largest decentralized exchange that there is right now. So the fact that they're giving the governance power to make these decisions to the community is, it's a really like unprecedented experiment on their part. And I think that the kinds of proposals that we'll see are going to be more oriented towards like community initiatives around it, rather than the parameters of the protocol itself, because it's kind of set as it is, right? It's just an exchange. There's going to be more DAOs that we're going to be working with, and more DeFi projects we're going to be working on in the future that are a little more interactive. But I think for this one, it should be interesting to see what kinds of proposals they make for the community. So, like basically, if you're not super technical, I wouldn't worry too much about it, because like I said, I think, this proposal, for example, is about the grants and about setting up funds. So they have a treasury. And so to kind of take a piece of that treasury and allocate it for giving out to the community for a grant program. So yeah, again, so like if you're not super technical, don't worry about it. You can still be a part of the committee, because a lot of the discussions are more around governance and around funding and around allocation of Uniswap's funds than they are necessarily about adjusting the details of the technical platform itself.
Yeah, exactly. So with that being said, that's the overarching purpose of these proposals, and this is what the forum will consist of. And exactly what Eric just said, it's not necessarily something that is imperative, right? You don't need to really understand it, because this is more of like a high level type endeavor, I guess you could say. But the whole goal of the committee is to discuss amongst one another on how we could participate in voting and the governance and the allocation of like what Eric said, of the voting power and things of that nature. So I'm going to pass these links on into the call chat for anyone that's curious enough to kind of go in and take a deep dive and read on it, and then we'll go from there. So with that being said, let's break out into our breakout rooms. Let's discuss amongst one another to see if there's any questions on what we just went over. If you have any further questions, please drop it in the chat, and we'll get into it after we come back from our breakout session. So before we do that, anybody at the moment, does anybody here have any questions on what we just reviewed? Any feedback on what we just discussed? You're more than welcome to speak up.
Yeah, I had a quick question if that was okay.
Yeah, shoot.
So I know one of the big proposals that might get brought up in Uniswap over the next couple of days is this fee switch issue. If we should turn it on to reduce the number of like the returns that LPs would get in liquidity pools in the Uniswap network, if we would have opportunity to talk or like hear about what some members think about turning on that fee switch during this call or not.
Absolutely, and that's actually something that we could actually break down in one of our breakout rooms, and then once we come back, we could also discuss it amongst the greater community once we get back. But that's a great point that you just brought up, and if you want to speak on it, go right ahead. We're more than happy to hear your opinion on it and what you think we should do as the BEN committee moving forward with that proposal.
Has it been proposed in the forum, or is it just an idea floating around?
So the fee switch is we're allowed to turn it on or have the ability to turn it on in 48 hours. And for those that don't know, like in the Uniswap network, 0.3% of every transaction goes towards like liquidity providers who are providing like different tokens that are being exchanged in liquidity pools. The fee switch would change that by 5 basis points, and that 0.5% with or 0.05% would then go to Uniswap token holders instead of liquidity providers. And like that has a lot of ramifications for like what we think the price of the Uniswap token might be, like the value of the Uniswap token, the value of the network in the medium to long term. So it's like a very difficult, like more technical and quantitative based question, but there have not been any proposals. There have been a few discussions that have been floated around on the Uniswap governance board, but I think it's going to become hotter and hotter over the next week or so after it becomes official that we can turn it on or not. And I've kind of already seen some tweets about this, and I think like it would be a good opportunity for BEN to cement itself. At Harvard, we're like releasing a research paper that we're planning on writing the next week or so to like discuss our views on whether or not we should release the fee switch, but we'd be more than happy to hear the thoughts from BEN and incorporate that into our paper as well, or like see just what the temperature check is on at other organizations.
That's awesome. Yeah, so let's just, I say let's break into the rooms and discuss that. I say we have an English room. We definitely should have a Turkish room. And Nicolo and Matteo, if you guys want to join the English room, or if you want like an Italian and Spanish room, I think you guys are the only ones here that are Italian and Spanish. So hopefully you guys can follow along and just join in the English room. English room is fine. Okay, perfect. So Antonio, let's do English room and Turkish room.
Right now, and it's kind of to incentivize them to contribute as like pseudo market makers in the Uniswap network. The fee switch, which the creators of Uniswap like kind of built into the protocol, we can turn it on as Uniswap delegates in 48 hours. And what that means is that it would decrease this 0.3% to 0.25%, and the 0.05% would then go to holders of the Uniswap governance tokens. For people who don't know, like the Uniswap governance token allows you to vote, like was talked earlier, on different Uniswap proposals. So there's a few ramifications of this, and it's like very hard to find out because like we've never hypo tested this before. The first is that there's a fear that liquidity providers might leave the Uniswap network if they're getting 16% less on their returns, i.e. moving from 0.3% to 0.25%. And in the worst case scenario, they move to a different decentralized exchange like a sushi swap or another like type of Uniswap network because they would be getting higher returns there. The pros would be that current holders of the Uniswap governance token would be getting this 0.05%, which like if you're looking at things from a short-term angle means like if the market were to incorporate this in the valuation of the Uniswap token, the price of the Uniswap token most likely would go up in the short to medium term, since you know that you are getting a 0.05% back from all transaction volume just from holding a Uniswap token. So there's like a couple questions here of like, do we think liquidity providers will leave if we decrease it from 0.3% to 0.25%? The other question that's related is if we think we should turn on the fee switch, which Uniswap holders should get this 0.05%? Should it be people who have voted? Should it be everyone who has a Uniswap token? And how do we want to reward these Uniswap token holders? Do we want to give them Uni, which has like inflationary pressure, which might not make the most sense? Do you want to give them Ethereum or like, and these are just sort of the things that I've been thinking about and that we're thinking about in writing this research paper for whether or not we should recommend turning on the fee switch or not. I think right now our stance is that because we don't know if we should turn on the fee switch and if liquidity providers will leave, we're actually thinking about turning on the fee switch for only 3 liquidity pools. And the 3 liquidity pools would be of 3 different volume sizes. So like one big one small one that might have more slippage than the larger one, and one in between. And from seeing like this kind of experiment of seeing if liquidity providers leave those pools, then we might say like, okay, if so many liquidity providers are leaving these 3 pools, like we shouldn't turn on the fee switch. And if anything, we should turn this fee switch back off for these 3 pools. If anyone has any questions, like feel free to interject and ask here. I know that was a lot over like 5 minutes.
Yeah, just a quick question. It's on the forum, correct? This discussion for this fee switch?
You're on mute, Christian.
I think there might be 1 or 2 that might be on right now, but like there's not anything that has picked up too much traction recently for like whether or not we should turn on the fee switch. But I have seen some stuff on Twitter, people asking for recommendations whether or not we should turn it on.
Gotcha. Okay.
And then
if we're at anywhere right now, it would just be at a temperature check. I don't think we've gotten anywhere close to proposal discussion or like an actual delegation pitch for this fee switch proposal.
And then 2 quick questions. One is, how much do current Uniswap governance tokens currently receive? I think that's at 0, but not sure.
It's 0.
Okay. And then how much do liquidity providers receive at competitors, say SushiSwap? Is that also 0.3%?
I think it's actually, I have no idea. This is something that we're like looking at right now of like the other exchanges, and like will probably be key to the analysis here, right? Because if they are providing like, I also don't know with the fee switch if we have to go down all the way to 0.25% to start. Like if we could go down to 0.275, maybe that would like be less scary, or like it would be a good way to hypo test what the effects are of that. So that's a good question. I'm not sure what the SushiSwap, PancakeSwap, et cetera, like other weird exchanges, like what their percentages are.
Okay, yeah, and thanks for all the research you've done on this. Like, it's really interesting stuff.
Yeah, anytime.
To me, it almost sounds like Congress raising taxes to give themselves a raise.
No, that's a great point. So I think a self-interested reason as to why a lot of people on Twitter or like that are current Uniswap holders want to turn on the fee switch is like for self-interested short-term gains, right? Is to get this 0.05%, even if that damages the medium to long-term value of the Uniswap network because liquidity providers are leaving. So I think that's like a very apt analogy here.
Yeah.
So I'm going through the forum and I see, well, this one in particular is stating that here, for the sake of credibility, you should not represent, I guess, this fee switch of 5 basis points or as the percentage. The difference for a liquidity provider is 16.6% of income, and it's not immaterial. Can you kind of speak on that for those that may not be familiar or may not understand what this statement?
Yeah. So like a liquidity provider that's contributing towards like a WBTC Ethereum pool, they're getting 0.3% of each transaction that takes place, or they're collecting fees in the 0.3%. So reducing this from 0.3% to 0.25% might only sound like 5 basis points, but that's actually that's like a 16% difference in the income of what they would be getting, which is like a non-material, it's like a non-trivial amount that they would be getting. So like in the event that if they were to go to SushiSwap and get 0.275%, then they would just from an economical standpoint, move over to Sushi Swap so that they would retain a higher income than staying on the Uniswap network.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
So
I think,
yeah,
well,
go for it.
I don't know if it's been mentioned, but like, I'm curious to see maybe if you can share some of the threads that you've been looking at, because, you know, Twitter is like such an important part where these things kind of like come to fruition. And if some Twitter threads gain momentum from certain people, then it'll go on to these like maybe like more formal forums. So yeah.
Yeah, so there haven't been like that many quantitative or like under the microscope investigations of whether or not we should turn on the fee switch on Twitter. It has just been like random comments that I'll see on Uniswap tweets that are like the Harvard Law blockchain and FinTech group has been tagged and saying like, when are you going to make a recommendation for whether or not we should turn the fee switch on? Like people are getting angsty and want to get their 0.5% like or 0.05% transaction fees. So there's no one that's actually done the groundwork. And I think that's kind of why there hasn't been a proposal yet or that many in-depth threads on the governance website, is because like people just don't know what the effects would be of turning on the fee switch. But the fact that it does turn on in 48 hours, I just think it means like every day that passes, there's a higher probability that someone will bring this up, especially as like dissent for not getting rewarded for your governance token. Like I imagine it to increase, especially because from the people who like were holding it onto these Uniswap tokens for that speculative value. But if I see anything on Twitter, I'd be more than happy to like throw it in the Telegram or whatever. But I haven't seen anything too good, which is kind of why it's been a block to writing this paper.
Okay. Yeah, I understand.
I could throw something in here as well. Well, first of all, I could recommend I'd call it like a governance aggregator platform. It's called Boardroom, and it gives kind of the governance procedure for like various DeFi protocols, and Uniswap being one of them. Like I think it gives a good description of the process from like temperature check to consensus, and then all the way to governance proposal. But yeah, on Boardroom this morning, I was reading and I saw that there was something written in the governance portal, the Uniswap governance portal, about allocating like 4 basis points of the 5 basis point protocol fee towards a staking contract for people to stake their uni, and people would receive 4 out of the 5 basis points from the staking contract, and the remaining basis point would go to the community treasury, which holds about what, like 45% of the like uni allocation aggregate.
Hey,
So
Josh,
yeah,
if you could drop that link in the chat, I could pull it up so everybody can kind of see what you're talking about. I think that'd be great.
yeah, sure. Yeah, I'll put it in the chat. But yeah, that was something I found interesting this morning. But yeah, I'll put it in the chat.
Cool.
Aside from the price of uni increasing, are there any foreseeable benefits from changing this liquidity reward?
I'm like inclined to be very or like don't have that optimistic a take if there is that many tangible benefits from rewarding Uniswap governance holders. Maybe it is you want more participation in governance proposals, and a way to incentivize that is like by making people buy Uniswap tokens, and like once they have Uniswap tokens, then they'll be more willing to vote on governance proposals, and the way that you incentivize that is by giving this 0.05%. But I haven't seen anything too persuasive. So if any of you like have thoughts as to what the benefits are, like I'd love to hear, but there's nothing off the top of my head that sounds too persuasive, honestly.
Well, Christian, what do you think about like V3, for example? I was reading the governance proposal, I mean the portal this past week, and I think Monet Supply was talking about using the protocol fee to incentivize liquidity providers to provide liquidity to V3. So maybe you take like, maybe half of the 5 basis points and allocate that towards LP rewards on V3. and then do something else with the remaining 0.25 basis points or whatever it is, like half the remaining half. But does that make sense? I thought that was
yeah. So I think the point of like not just giving these 5 basis points to Uniswap holders, but giving them back to the Uniswap community or like DeFi ecosystem writ large, like maybe might make more sense. So we take like 0.01% and we'll allocate that towards like the DeFi ecosystem in terms of like grants or other projects that we think would work very well with Uniswap or would work to create synergies conjunctively with Uniswap. And that is like more persuasive to me than just like saying like, oh, you have Uniswap tokens, like here's a bag, like we're just giving it to you for free and you don't even have to vote to get this bag. Like that's kind of where a lot of the skepticism I have lies.
And honestly, I feel like by giving these 5 basis points to Uniswap governance holders, token holders, then it's only going to incentivize more whales to come into the platform. So I'm guessing that's not something we want.
Yeah, so this is like a reason why people who currently hold Uniswap tokens want this, right? Is because the idea is that when whales come in, the price will go up, and like the price of Uniswap might be to like $1.25, and they cash out. But what I was saying is like in the medium to long term, if we're trying to establish value for the Uniswap network to be something that exists in perpetuity and is not just something that people are trying to make a quick buck out of a dip, like it makes sense to kind of think about like really strongly about like what this has an effect on introducing whales to the market, what it has an effect on like getting liquidity providers to leave the market, etc. So I think that point's spot on.
Yeah, I'm only hearing cons about this proposal.
Same. I kind of agree with everything you guys have been saying.
So now, all right. So I guess playing devil's advocate, what will be the positive implications if this were to pass? Will that? Yeah.
I think a happy medium ground, maybe. This is like also just playing in the devil's advocate line, is if we want to incentivize people to actually vote in Uniswap proposals and get an engaged community, maybe you don't get all 0.5 per base, or you don't get all 5 basis points just for being a Uniswap token holder. But if you actually vote, then you get like maybe 0.1%. And that incentivizes people who have Uniswap tokens to actually vote in the community, be involved in community proposals, etc. Another thing, like another variation of this is if you propose something that ends up getting passed, then you're rewarded. And we create like a small treasury using this 0.5%. And that's how we reward people who are putting through like really good proposals through the Uniswap network. But yeah, those are like the variations, I think, of the pros that could exist, but I still think that's distinct from saying every Uniswap governance token holder should get these 5 basis points. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's a lot more incentivized.
Yeah, there's a question. I'm sorry.
No, I was just gonna say,
everyone?
like, if the argument was incentivizing governance, that's more legitimate, and it's not gonna have as many people trying to, come in and just buy and dump.
Yeah, I mean, we could even make it that like you have to hold Uniswap for a certain amount of time, or you have to be a holder for a certain amount of time to decrease like the incentives of just like having the Uniswap token to get this 0.5% and then leaving right away once, and which would be bad for governance in the long term anyway. So I think that makes sense.
Christian, have you guys ever voted on an actual proposal, or have you at least participated in temperature check or consensus check? And is that done on Snapshot, and does that require gas?
So we admittedly have not participated in temperature check or the consensus checks or voting because we're quite new. We were just named like a Uniswap delegate in the past, I want to say 6 to 8 weeks. And we did get some, like we were delegated a sizable chunk from Andreessen Horowitz. But so like we're still in the process of figuring out exactly what proposals we would want to make ourselves from scratch, but I think the fee switch is taking on the majority of our time. In terms of your gas question, it doesn't take any gas to put anything on the governance website, including temperature check or a consensus check. But for voting, you do have to vote with gas, which can be a pain in the ass if you're a small Uniswap holder. And at that point, it probably makes sense to delegate to someone like a BEN or like a Harvard Law blockchain group. So since you don't have to pay $50 to vote your 1 or 2 Uniswap tokens or whatever, however many Uniswap tokens you have.
What if you use the protocol fee switch to offset gas fees for voting? I mean, I don't know exactly what 5 basis points, what that notional amount is in fees. So I don't know if that would exactly offset gas costs for voting, but that was just a spontaneous idea I had.
I thought about this too, of gas, of using it to offset gas. I think it's a good band-aid solution just given how congested the ETH network is right now, but I'm not sure, like, hopefully it doesn't stay this congested and gas fees go down, right? And if we were just to create this band-aid solution, then we have to like kind of bank on us being able to agree on something to do with these basis points in the future, and which isn't the worst thing, especially since gas fees are so bad now, but that's just a consideration that we should take into account as well.
Yeah, the fact I did not even realize that we have to pay to vote if we already own the tokens. That's, especially for the smaller players, that's completely disincentivized. Whereas like if you own, the way crypto works, if you own maybe like 1 million or 450 million of these, then it's a lot easier to vote, and percentage wise you're paying much less.
Yeah,
I
think
wonder
that,
if there's going to be layer 2 tools for that, like moving snapshot page to Matic network, or doing the voting on Matic network, and then, you know, settling the vote back on the main chain.
I think that would be huge and a fun project to work on, honestly.
I was just going to say the way around this too is just to delegate your vote to someone who you think will be voting alongside your interest, since like proportionally that $50 means so much less to someone who's voting with like 10 million Uniswap tokens. I actually don't know though if you have to pay any gas fees when you're delegating your votes to someone else. Do you know that, Eric?
I do not. I haven't made any delegations yet. We've only been delegated 2. So yeah, I don't know actually. We'd have to check. I know you do it through Sybil.org. Is that where you vote as well, through Sybil.org, or do they use a separate voting platform?
I think it's like straight up on like on Uniswap, on the Uniswap like whatever their network page is.
Oh, kind of like Compound, that they have like their own custom voting portal? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I think it depends, right, on what stage, or if we're a temperature check, consensus check, or governance proposal. I think the last round probably takes place, the governance proposal takes place on the actual, like, you know, Uniswap governance portal. But I think the first temperature check and the consensus check take place on Snapchat, which allows for gasless voting, essentially.
Yeah.
I believe that's how it works, but I'm not positive.
I'm curious to see kind of going back to the fact of what Eric was brought up was is L2. I think Uniswap with V3, they are planning on implementing some sort of compatibility with layer 2 protocols. I want to see how that will play out in terms of one LP, and again with transaction fees. I think that'll be interesting to see how that could be incorporated with this proposal of a fee switch. How it will there be more fees accumulated or not? I'm not quite sure. I'm not all too familiar with that process, at least with the fee switch. But maybe Christian could kind of talk about it, speak on that a bit more. But yeah, I'm just really stoked to see how L2 is going to play out with this.
I admittedly don't know the answer to that question, honestly. So
fair enough.
Yeah, the Uniswap team knows the answer to that, right? I'm pretty sure there is like Unipig, I think it's called, is like their V3 for people to check it out. But I admittedly, I don't think anyone knows what's happening with. I find L2 very confusing personally. So if someone could expound on L2, that would be sick. If there's an L2 expert in the audience.
Well, there's multiple types of L2. So I think what some people think of like L2 as being built like directly on Ethereum, so relying on the security of Ethereum. That would be what people call like the actual L2. That would be like Optimism, zero knowledge rollups, and projects that are like around that. I think Starkware is like looking into that, or trying to build that, and that would be just like a layer 2. You kind of kick things up to this high network, high speed transactions, and then settle back on to the main chain. And so Uniswap is working with Optimism on that, and so is Synthetics. So Synthetics is already like a testnet layer 2 solution that you can use for Synthetics to do those swaps. Now solutions like Matic/Polygon, because Matic is rebranding to Polygon, and XDAI is a little different. Is side chains, so they have their own set of validators, and they're like a side network. So you would bridge over your assets. You would also bridge over your assets to Optimism, but in this case, you bridge over your assets to a different chain that is maintained by its own set of validators, but that chain is a lot faster. And so, right, XDAI does that, Matic does that, and there are projects on Matic like OpenSea, Decentraland. So a lot of the gaming projects are moving to Matic, and I think now there's exchanges on Matic as well. So SushiSwap just launched on Matic. So I think there's definitely a place for that. I like Optimism, what Optimism is doing. I also really like Matic and what Matic is doing, but I think that some people don't think that Matic is like the end solution, because Matic still relies on its own set of validators, where like a real L2 would like rely on Ethereum's validators that just kind of be built like directly on top of Ethereum. But I know that Polygon is also, which again is Matic, they're also trying to integrate, or it's their plan to integrate Optimism as well and these other solutions. So the sidechain is just one of their scaling solutions. So they're trying to become a whole like offering of scaling solutions for Ethereum.
Now
So the
can you
choices to build
yeah.
on, the choices to build on just depend on like where your trade-offs are in terms of like security sidechains versus like being built directly on top and stuff.
Now, really quickly, because I think we're going to have to get back to the main chat, to the main discussion channel. But really, if you could do it in 1 minute, can you distinguish Optimism and ZK Rollup? I know that they're two very similar in some ways in practice, but at the protocol level, they're pretty different. So if you can kind of just touch on that really quick for those who aren't aware of them, I think that'd be really cool.
I don't know. Based off of the name, I can imagine that ZK Rollups utilizes zero knowledge proofs. And so I always thought it was like more of a privacy focused thing, whereas Optimism is just focused on the scaling thing. But I don't know, we'd have to look more into that, because I don't know much about what zero knowledge proofs does. No, I know what zero knowledge proofs does. I don't know what ZK Rollups does as a solution.
Oh, gotcha. Well, we're really quick. I guess I could break it down. So like, to my understanding, right, ZK rollups, they're gonna fix a lot of like fundamental issues that are seen with optimistic rollups, right? So I think ZK rollup, they're gonna try to eliminate like tail risk, right? So theft of funds from or via like intricate attack vectors, right? They're also going to try to like reduce withdrawal times from 1 to 2 weeks to like a few minutes, right? It's going to be almost nearly instantaneous, right? And I think they're also going to try to increase transaction confirmations to like almost like limitless volumes. So in terms of throughput, they're really trying to like expedite it as fast as possible, right? And then they're going to also obviously introduce privacy as a default, right? Hence the zero knowledge proof utilization. And I guess the overall question, I mean, like, is like, what is a roll up, right? Because everybody gets kind of confused on that. So it's interesting because we see other L2 platforms kind of like, here's a niche one, like OMG, Omnesi Go, right? Omnesi Go uses Plasma, and Ethereum initially was supposed to use Plasma, but obviously we went on to bigger, better things like Optimism and other big L2 protocols. I don't really want to get into it because I know we got to get back into the main chat. But what I'll do is I'll drop a really cool Medium article in the main Telegram chat and the Uniswap committee chat, so everybody can kind of get familiar with it, because this is a really interesting conversation that a lot of these automated money markets like Uniswap and SushiSwap and I doubt Binance Smart Chain is going to get into this, but things of that nature, products of that nature, they're really going to start trying to implement moving forward. So it's a cool conversation. Maybe we could have in our next committee call. So cool.
Okay, so if you press on leave, it should say leave breakout room. So you can press leave breakout room and bring us back to the main chat.
Cool.
Sıkıntı çıkar mı tarzında bir şey. Bu proposal böyle değerlendiriliyor.
I have a question about this. Now, all fees goes to liquidity providers, right? And if the token holders will take fees, then will it be distributed equally, 50-50, or what percentage will be?
It's said in the proposal, I don't remember the amount, but what do you think it should be? Do you think it should be 50-50? Do you think that the holder should get most? Should it be 80-20? What would you think would be fair for a split?
Okay.
Yani sence nasıl olmalıydı diye söyle. Ben hiç anlamıyorum.
Security, it's like a stock. And if you do that, then you don't know what, would you get in trouble with the SEC? Is Uniswap going to get in trouble with the SEC? That a lot of the team lives in the United States. So enabling the fee sharing with the token holders could open up some issues there. Then there's also the issue that if you give some of the fees to the token holders, you take away from the liquidity providers, so they might go away. They might not want to do it anymore because now they're earning less, because you're taking the rewards and you're giving a percentage of it to the holders. Those are the risks.
Yani diyor ki tokenleri verdiğin zaman hani token sahibi olanlar transaction'lardan bir şey kazanıyor, hisse gibi aynen. Yani
Evet.
hisseye benzeyeceği için orada bir legal bir sıkıntı olabilir diyorlar. Diğer sıkıntı liquidity sağlayanlar daha az kazanacağı için artık bu işi yapmak istemeyebilirler diyor.
Burada likidite sağlayanlara biraz şey yapmamız gerekiyor. Üzerine düşmemiz gerekiyor bence bizim. Yani burada kimin lehine karar vermeliyiz? Yani biz mesela likidite sağlayıcısı mıyız? Yoksa token holder mıyız? Yoksa Uniswap miyiz? Kimin lehine karar vermemiz gerekiyor? Onu anlamadım ben tam olarak yani.
İşte onu
Ben
tartışıyoruz şu an.
kullanıcı olarak karar vermem gerekiyorsa mesela şu an bence böyle bir şey olabilir. Hukuksal boyutunu hiç bilmiyorum. Hakim değilim. Bu Uni'nin de değerini arttırır. Temettü gibi bir şey olur yani bu.
Murat is saying that he doesn't know, he is not familiar with the legal stuff, but probably the uni tokens value will increase if that change is made. He predicts.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. So that's why, yeah, the people that are holding the token, you would think that they would want to do this, right? Because the value would go up. And you could argue that it's healthy for the ecosystem to reward the holders in that way. What about the people that are providing the liquidity? Because they're taking a risk. So would it be fair to take away their rewards to then give it to the holders?
Yeah, I should. Yani, okay, you understood that. I don't need to translate that. Yeah. I think there must be some kind of split between the token and liquidity. So that change should be done, but I don't know about the ratios. How should it be split between those two? But I think that change, I also agree with you, it's healthy for the ecosystem and the whole process.
I think legal issues is not very important beside from United States. I mean, mostly the legal issues of United States and in the blockchain legal issues in United States can lead to price of any coin. So we should focus on what is going to be in the legal issues in United States, not Turkey or Europe. I think they are mostly, I mean, the market is mostly related with United States actually. So I believe that we should look closer to United States regulations. And I don't know what we should do about to voting. I think. I mean they are. I mean, bu arada Türkçe konuş. Ha, adam buradaymış, pardon. I don't know. The regulations are very new, especially in Turkey. I can say that. I mean, there is no regulation very well, and they are trying to create right now. I think they will be, but it is mostly going to be about Bitcoin or Ethereum, not Uni. I'm not waiting for that. For Uni or other decentralized exchange coins.
Yeah, I was gonna say, do you have an idea of how many people in Turkey use decentralized exchanges versus how many use like centralized exchanges like Binance?
Yeah, probably centralized exchanges is far more than decentralized exchanges from what I observe. And most of the people who know about cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin and Ethereum probably know it from the advertisements of centralized like cryptocurrency trade stuff, and therefore, yeah, that decentralized exchange is not very well known actually in Turkey. I can say that.
Yeah, exactly. And the prices are very high. They don't know how to use. Most of the people don't know how to use Ethereum wallet or MetaMask wallets.
Yeah.
Or they just buy on Binance and they hold them in there. They look at just like a gold or any fiat money.
Yeah.
They don't do anything about that. They don't know how is it going.
Yeah, and the transaction fee is really high for a Turkish citizen. It's like $15. Yeah, if you want to use decentralized finance, decentralized exchange, then you should go big or just don't use that.
Yes. Okay, that's a good point.
By the way, if we should think in terms of Turkey, then it shouldn't change, I think, because people in Turkey are not caring about taking fees for holding, because they are caring about the price is down. When the price is down, then they think that what does matter to take fees. So if Uniswap give them fees, it will mean nothing, because people are really scaring about the price of the down of price. So also they are not using decentralized exchange. So in terms of Turkey, it will be meaningless.
Okay, cool. So I'm gonna go to the other room, but I think what you guys should talk about here is kind of what would you think? Do you think that, like kind of come to a conclusion, like we think that we should make this change, or we shouldn't make this change. If you have a ratio of like what it would be, like, hey, it should be split 50%, 50%, or 80-20. And then I think also if you think that it matters in Turkey, do you think that it's going to be less likely to be used in Turkey if there was this change, or do you think it's going to help adoption in Turkey for the Uniswap and for the Uni token if this change was made? I think that's a good perspective that you guys could bring to the last 10 minutes when we come back together. Does that make sense?
Sure. So do we have accessibility to the English room? For reference, maybe we can listen them for a bit after we have a conclusion.
Yes. So after you have a conclusion, feel free to join the English room. And
do we have access to that? I cannot see that.
If you click on the screen, you should see like breakout rooms.
I cannot. Yeah, I know how to use Zoom, but I cannot see.
I'll do it. I'll just stay here, and then you guys tell me, and I'll move you guys there. So it's fine.
Okay.
Oh, I thought people could choose their own. That's interesting. I guess only hosts can.
I think you should assign that in the start of the meeting.
Yeah. Okay, so Antonio, you stay here, and then when you guys kind of have a decision, you can switch over to the English room.
There's also 10 minutes
ask for help.
Yeah, there's 10 minutes left for us to be all together again.
Okay then. Never mind.
Okay.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, see you.
I also shared the link for the Turkish edition of our Uniswap proposal. You guys can go there and read everything in Turkish. We translated the graphs, we translated everything. So it makes easier to understand.
Okay, thanks.
By the way, Antonio, what do you think about this subject? So should we think in terms of we think in favor of Turkey, in favor of people in Turkey, or in favor of Uniswap? I just didn't understand it.
I think you should do it in the favor of people in Turkey, right?
Yeah, then
what do you guys think?
Then it's meaningless, you know.
I think people in Turkey will use it. It's just very early. This is a very powerful tool. I understand you can only buy it on Binance and just trade, but it's just a matter of time until people in Turkey start using more decentralized finance, because there's a lot of options. Like, for example, people in Turkey will be interested in this because the banks, they only give you 1% interest on a savings account. Throughout the Uniswap exchange, there is tokens there that can give you 10% or 30% interest on what you have on your MetaMask account per year. So that's really interesting. Like, there is a lot. And
yeah,
I think
actually, there is a project like that in many projects, in many coins, such as AVAX, for example.
Yeah, AVAX. I was going to mention AVAX.
We can stake them in this, also in this coins, for example. But when it comes to think about people in Turkey, it's too early, I think.
Yeah, and our mission is to educate the people about this, because, for example, with Uniswap, it's a decentralized exchange, and you can have one token, and then you can change it to USDT or USDC, and that's really powerful because it allows you to exchange very easily to a stable currency. That's so it's the liquidity. It's very important because certain tokens, they're like, okay, we give you 30%, but you need to put it on that exchange or on their wallet, and then it's very hard to transfer outside of that wallet. So there's a lot you can do here.
Also, there is a price risks, because if price goes down, we cannot put order in DEX exchanges, you know. But it's too risky, I think.
there is multiple things you can do. You can put, I think there is ways you can put a stop limit order. And if the price goes down, you can even like loan, for example, you can loan your crypto, like you can loan some part of a Bitcoin, like 0.00 Bitcoin, you can loan and have interest on that. So you don't, there is a lot of new ways with decentralized finance and what Uniswap gives you.
Okay, guys, we have 4 minutes, so we should let Antonio go and discuss the last conclusion that we have.
Yeah, discuss in Turkish.
Okay. So abi o zaman hep kararı bir konuşalım, zaten 3-4 dakika kalmış. Tamam, o zaman şey dedik, yani Türkiye açısından bakacağımız zaman çok erken decentralized exchange'ler için. Dolayısıyla zaten bir regülasyon da olmadığı için Türkiye açısından değerlendirmek anlamsız. Ancak yani ancaktan sonrası işte hani nasıl olmalı mı böyle bir split, olursa nasıl bir ratio olmalı?
Bu bence işte %80'e %20 olabilir. Yani %20 token holder'lara verilebilir. Çünkü liquidity provider'ları kaybetmeye değmez yani bu değişiklik.
Ya evet. Ya bir de liquid provider'lar da zaten belirli bir sayıda token holder diyeceğim, yani saçma oldu. Yani.
Onlar şöyle yapıyor. Onlar uni token alıyor mesela ve unilerini yapıyorlar. Likidite olarak borç veriyorlar.
Anladım.
Ve bunun karşılığında para kazanıyorlar.
Anladım. Oraya anladım da. Ratio kısmını hiç bilmem.
Çok kompleks bir pool havuzu var ve o havuz üzerinden ben 3-4 tane yazı yazdım, araştırdım da %29 oranında stable coin olarak işte Murat'ın dediği gibi deposit edip daha sonrasında paranı lending, borrowing yapınca %29 yıllık bir APA veriyor. Yani yıllık bir faiz kazancı veriyor ki bu rakamın ben gerçekten güzel bir faiz oranı olduğunu düşünüyorum. Hani ama tabii ki de Uniswap'in diğer protokollere göre daha güvenli olması da bu teminatı sağlıyor. Ama tabii ki de hiçbir zaman DeFi'nin bir garantisi olduğu söylemez. Sürekli görüyorsunuz işte DeFi platformları şu kadar bir eklenmeden dolayı şu kadar bir kaybı uğradı gibi. Ama ben Murat'ın dediğini kıymetli buluyorum, o oranı. Ben de aynı fikirdeyim. İlerlenirse o şekilde ilerlenilmesi gerektiğini düşünüyorum. Ama hani ya bence erken falan da değil Türkiye için. Ben şöyle söyleyeyim, ben öyle bakmıyorum olaya. Ben o konuda katılmıyorum size. Ya bunun Türkiye'si, A'sı, B'si yok. Bu olay global village abi. O yüzden biz burada da bunu ufak ufak böyle bir şekilde başlatalım. Çünkü bu iş bayağı büyüyecek. Yani DeFi olarak kalmayacak. DeFi evrilecek. Farklı bir noktaya gidecek. Çünkü şu an DeFi'nin yeterli seviyede ben ilerlediğini düşünmüyorum. Bir çakılacak mecburen. Daha sonrasında DeFi gerçekten DeFi'laşmaya başlayacak. Bu 1-2 yıl içerisinde olur. Ben böyle bakıyorum.
Gerçekten decentralized olacak diyorsun.
Aynen öyle. Ben Murat'la aynı fikirdeyim.
80'e 20 oranını nereden yaptınız? Yani insanları liquid sağlayanları korkutmayacak 80 iyi midir tarzında?
Ya abi şöyle bir durum var şimdi. Ben Murat'ı bölmeyeyim ama Murat zaten birazdan açıklar. Oransal ve trading tarafında o yaptığı için o şimdi daha iyi onlar ama ya şimdi o havuzların sıkıntıları da var. İnsanlar oraya kitlemelerini yapıyor. Stable coin olarak da o havuzlarda ilk başta bir teminat gösteriliyor ama oradaki o dalgalanmalar sıkıntılı hale gelince, yani çok fazla bir miktar çekildiğinde o bir kompleks matematiksel olarak bir değerlendirme formülü var onun. Her DeFi platformunun yani pool'un farklı bir formülü var. Onu economic paper'ında ya da white paper'ında okumak gerekiyor. Bunların yani en basit özünde her şeyi white paper'ında girip teknik olan teknik olmayan, teknik olmayanın da teknik olmayan okur. Lafım olmaz. Ama okunması gerekiyor. Biz ne yapıyoruz? Abi kaç olur? İşte trading tarafında o at 10 işte 20 gelir. İşte bu şekilde ilerlenildiği sürece de
evet, ben onu
hiçbir zaman olmayacaktır.
Evet,
ben böyle bakıyorum. Katılırsın, katılmazsın, katılırsınız, katılmazsınız. Umurumda da değil. Gerçek budur. Bu gerçeğe uyan kişi de zaten görüyor. Fakat sadece bu da değildir. Temel ve tekniğin arasında kalıp olayı görmektir yani. Ama white paper okumayan adam cahildir. Onu da söyleyeyim.
Ben bunu görmek için Uniswap Liquid the Pool formüle mi yazıyorum? Ne yazıyorum?
Yani şöyle bir nokta da var. Okuyan kişilerin yorumları üzerinden de ilerlemek de mümkün. Ama tabii o adama ne kadar güveneceksin? Ya ben güvenmiyorum. Kişi ne kadar iyi olursa olsun. Güvenirsin, o sana ben saygı gösteririm. Ben kendim okumayı tercih ediyorum.
Ya
Ama tabii ki de
evet
o kişilerle de tartışıyorum. Yarın mesela Devrim Danyal, Celil Öztürk, birkaç hoca daha var. Oturacağız, NFT konuşacağız. Nedir, ne değildir? İnsanlar tweet'in NFT olduğunu niye düşünüyorlar ama aslında NFT değildir. Neyse konuyu öyle çok uzatmayayım. Ben Murat'a sözü bırakıyorum. O oranlama konusunda aynı fikirdeyim. O zaten açıklayacak.
Valla açıkçası ben de şimdi likidite sağlayacak kadar bir uzmanlığım yok. Uniswap'te likidite sağlayacak kadar bir sermayem de yok. O yüzden bu konu bu konu pek de beni ilgilendirmiyor açıkçası. Yani şey olsa mesela bu fiiller dağıtılsa uniholder'lara verilse düşünür müyüm hold etmeyi? Belki bir tık düşünebilirim ama tatmin edici bir şey olması lazım.
O da doğru. Bak o açıdan baktığımda da doğru. Yani sonuçta sen de oraya hibe edeceksin dijital varlığını. Seni ne derecede tatmin edecek?
Evet.
O da çok güzel bir şey bakış açısı.
Bir sürü
Bir sürü
havuz var
olanak
ya.
var.
Çok
Yani
fazla oranlar veren yerler var. En
mesela
basitinden pankek var mesela.
Pankekle ilgili ben ufak bir araştırmamı yaptığımda şunu gördüm. Uniswap ve diğer Balancer'a göre veya işte EV'ye göre çok daha yüksek getiriler var. Hatta Murat belki de diyecek ki biz Win Turkey olarak işte sallıyorum Türkiye'de yetişen bir tane meyvenin şeyini yapalım diyecek. Ürününü çıkartalım işte FIFO olarak. Abi biz bir başlatacağız onu. İnsanlar fonlamaya başlayacak. Belki de farklı bir noktaya gidecek. Yani öyle hikayeler de var. Ben Pankek'le ilgili bir yazı yazmıştım. Detaylı araştırdım Pankek uzman coin'de. Yani dediğin doğru. Uzatmayacağım. Yani çok dallandırmayalım. İşin açıkçası biz bunu daha da iyi hep beraber kolektif bir şekilde inceleyip adım adım belli bir süre geçtikten sonra ilerletirsek ben daha sağlıklı olacağını düşünüyorum. Ben de mesela bilmediğim tonla kısmı var Uniswap'ın. Bilmiyorum yani detaylı.
Aynen öyle.
Yani, evet, ya soru güzel tartışılır ama biz yani o calculation'ı yapacak ve sonuca varacak insanlar
Tabii.
olmadığımız için
Ya,
garip bir
bence
soru
de biraz
olmuş.
garip geldi. Bu soruyu bize sormaları biraz
Evet. Antonio,
şey.
are you here?
Hey,
Ya,
So we were just talking about that, but we understood that that calculation is so complex and technical that it is not easy for us to like give a prediction or a suggestion. Like we can give a rough estimation, but it wouldn't be so much scientific or rather even usable or rather close to close to best.
yeah, and it's okay. It's just you're trying to predict. But I think what is important and we're trying to do is to get universities in Turkey to have some voting power on the proposals in
Yeah,
Uniswap.
I see.
So you can either vote in proposals that people in Turkey want or on proposals that your university wants. I think that's how it matters for the voting. Yeah, and that's our main goal with this. Because Uniswap gave some voting to main universities, so we wanted to have voting for all universities around the world.
So by the way, do you suggest that we vote university by university or as Turkey?
University by university, a little better. I think it's like blockchain club at each university, having some power to vote.
I see.
Because it's the same as in the US, like MIT, Harvard, Stanford. Yeah.
Okay, o zaman beyler son şeyimiz ve şey var. Şeyimiz son conclusion'ımız ne diyeceğiz? Bunu bana bir söyleyin de yanlış şey de olmayalım. Aynı şey de
Ben
olmayalım.
olayı daha çok anlamaya çalıştığım için.
Okay. Aybars, yani diyoruz ki şu anlık erken olsa da Türkiye'de de böyle bir şey girişilirse yani calculation'lar çok kompleks olsa ve buna bir yorumumuz olmasa da liquidity provider'ı korkutmayacak bir oranda olmalı. Tarzında bir şey mi diyeyim ben yani?
Yani öyle diyebiliriz. Biz bunun ilerlenilmesine okeyiz yani anladığım kadarıyla. Fakat daha somut adımlarla yani daha stratejik adımlarla adım adım yavaş yavaş gitmek istiyoruz. Benim kendi görüşüm bu. Hani herkes için de öyle olduğunu düşünüyorum çünkü bilmeyenlerimiz var. Bilenlerimiz de yeterli seviyede konuyu bilmediği için Burada
Tamam, hadi
şey
görüşürüz.
güvenli sularda
16% material change on the income they would get, it would mean that there's a higher chance they might move to a place like a sushi swap where they're getting a higher income. Some of the pros, though, of turning on the fee switch is like maybe we want to incentivize more people to vote on different Uniswap proposals or to push through Uniswap proposals. And if we were able to reward them with some of these 5 basis points, if they do vote or if they do put a proposal through that we think is, or that ends up being successful, then that's how they get rewarded. But those are the pros and cons right now. I think the expectation for a lot of Uniswap holders is that the fee switch is going to get turned on, and that might contribute towards some of the speculative value that Uniswap has, as well as introduce whales in the market later, since they would be getting 0.05% of each transaction fee. But that being said, like I think the sentiment in the room was that it's maybe not the best for the long-term value of the network because of the risk that it proposes of liquidity providers of leaving. But yeah, that's kind of the gist of everything that we talked about.
So on Turkish side, I can talk more. Yeah, we actually pretty much agree all of Christian said. And about the legal stuff, in Turkey, there's no legal like regulations. Therefore, if it's considered in the legal terms, it should be considered in terms of legal actions of USA rather than other international regulations, because it's much important. And yeah, pretty much all of the Christians said we agree, actually.
Yeah, I think there was interesting discussion in the Turkish chat, and I don't know if this was the same in the English chat, but about their the fee switch from a legal perspective. Would that run the regulatory risk of classifying uni tokens as a security, because now there's like a dividend, and should that factor into the decision of whether or not to enable that fee switch?
So this is something we've talked a lot about at Harvard Law. I think it really does increase the risk that it does become classified as a security. And that's like not a legal opinion that any of us are positioned to give, since like we're not lawyers or have worked with security law like at a firm or anything like that. So that's like my disclaimer I have to give as a law student. But I do think it does increase the probability that it is classified as a security, which would just be a pain in the ass for the Uniswap network and could lead to a lot of problems that, like, I'm not going to say like would be that we would experience what Ripple experience, but similar problems are always a pain to deal with. So that's something to keep in mind as well.
Yeah. So I know there's no like official proposal out, but I think, Antonio, it'd be fun if we did a test vote on the Zoom to try it out on this. And if you guys want to talk about it more, we could talk about it more. But I think it'd be good to like do our own test vote of like whether or not we're generally in favor of enabling the fee switch, or opposed to it. What was that, Ishan?
I think it'd be fun to try out a test vote.
Yeah, Christian, could you summarize what were the details again? That it's what percentage of the fees are we taking away from the liquidity providers and giving to the holders?
It would go from yeah, it's in the chat it's 0.05%. It goes from 0.3% transaction fees that liquidity providers currently get, and that would go down to 0.25%.
Okay, so you're giving 1/6 of it from. You're taking away 1/6 from the liquidity providers, you're giving it to the token holders. Okay. Cool. So let's do that poll while we're waiting for Antonio to set that up. Any final comments on that before there's any kind of vote?
Just important to note, like the poll is framed as a very binary decision, and I understand the utility of that now, but there are probably in-betweens that we can all talk about later that might make sense to incentivize governance. Or like maybe turning on the switch for 1 or 2 pools and not all of them, but just something to keep in mind.
Yeah, I think that kind of like what we want to get out of this is not so much that we're going to present a vote like yes or no, unless there's actual voting going on, then we have to select from the options they give. But I think in the meetings in between like the proposals or between the voting periods, we can present a thesis or like kind of a recap, and then post that in the comments thread of the proposal discussion to kind of say like, this is what we think. We think that as you said, like we should enable it, but to a lesser extent or only for certain situations. So it's like a lot more nuance. I think it's in the form of like giving, a paragraph of feedback as opposed to just like, here's what we think, yes or no.
Yeah, exactly. And I think I said this in the breakout room as well, but we're working on a paper at Harvard Law, like talking about the pros and cons of both approaches and gonna come out with a recommendation. And we'd love to like partner with Ben if you guys like wanted to sign as like one of the sponsors who supports this paper, if it is something that you guys end up supporting, whatever conclusion we come to, but that'll be like an iterative thing that we're in communication with you about.
Yeah, that would be great. I think that let's talk more about that. If you could share a draft or tell us more about the paper in the Uniswap chat, or any questions that you want us to like answer, or you want other students and other clubs, universities to answer, just please post it in the Uniswap chat. You can also post it in the main chat as well. But over time, we're hoping that we can get everyone from the main chat who's interested in participating in the Uniswap governance to join the Uniswap chat, so it becomes a more involved and intimate discussion, because things could get lost in the main chat very easily.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Okay, there's a comment. Yes, there's a comment from Jonathan that the switch for a smaller percentage, for 0.01% versus 0.05% for a smaller number of pools, like for example, 3 pools, would be a good experiment. Yeah. Is that covered in the report that you're saying? Is that what you guys are suggesting as Harvard?
I think that's where we are standing right now, is that we are thinking about recommending it for only 3 pools, or like no more than 3 pools, each of different sizes, so we can see how it affects slippage at 3 different volume transaction levels. And number 2 is that we're still not entirely sure if we can do this with the fee switch, but not rewarding all Uniswap token holders, but those who vote with their Uniswap tokens, and that's to incentivize actual governance. But that's kind of like where we stand right now, but that's really subject to change over the next 2 weeks.
Okay, yeah, that's cool. And you can see based off of the results, so the results of the voting, so for should we just straight activate the fee with the parameters that we had discussed, the standard parameters for all the pools, that was 14 for no and 9 for yes, so 61% no. So that just means that this needs a much longer discussion, and that is a lot more nuanced than just enabling the fee across all pools for a flat rate. So yeah, I mean, next time that we have a meeting, if the paper is published already, or if it's not published yet, we still have to for you to take some time and kind of go over it more deeply, especially as we bring on more universities to kind of participate.
Yeah, more than happy to do that.
Okay, awesome. Any final comments from anyone in the chat? I think that we'll try to get another meeting up as we get closer to the voting period, have the more nuance, participate in some discussions. And I think, it might be the second or third meeting of these that we'll be casting a real official vote, and we'll have to spend gas, and we'll be voting with millions of dollars of voting power delegated to us by our alumni and our partners. So we'll see.
I also wanted to say, I know that I might have come out as very negative towards turning on this fee switch, but there were a lot of people who do want to turn it on. I'm going to drop my email in the chat, and if you wanted to talk to me just for 15 minutes or something, feel more than happy to. And I'm agnostic as to turning on the fee switch or not. That's just kind of where I stand right now, but can be persuaded either way.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you. Please drop your email in the Telegram chat as well. Well, I'm not sure if that's what you just said, but or if you meant the Zoom chat, but definitely do both. And also something else, guys. So, this isn't just about getting the club presidents and having the club presidents, but really anyone from any university is welcome to join and participate in discussions. That's why we're recording it. That's why we're putting it up as videos. So, and like I said, if you don't know all the nuances yet, not all of us are law students like Christian here, but there's still value to be involved, and we're focused a lot on educating. So, and we're going to have more workshops and more sessions where we bring in Uniswap, where we bring in other delegates to kind of talk about their thought process and how they kind of go about this, ultimately to help, your university and your club one day get set up with your own. But in the meantime, don't worry about it. Just show up, just listen, and tell us what you learned in the chat, and, just be involved that way. and get your friends involved to it at your university or other universities.
Thanks so much, Jeremy and Eric, for hosting this, and Christian for being so informed about everything going on.
No, thanks everybody for showing up. We really appreciate your time, and hopefully, well, not hopefully, we will be hosting a lot more of these moving forward. As everybody here is a part of the Uniswap committee, and we're kind of looking forward to diving more into proposals and really start getting more active in the Uniswap voting and governance process. So, if anybody finds something that within the discussion forum that you find interesting and is worth, talking about in the committee chat, please shoot it over, and let's be a little bit more engaging on this. It's really exciting stuff, and yeah, we're looking forward to it.
I have a final question for Christian. So Christian, how often does Harvard Law School meet to discuss? And what do you recommend? How often should our committee meet to discuss?
It's a good question. It's hard because this fee switch issue is kind of a fire drill, and like this is really the only big thing that is like urgently taking up our time of like having to meet more consistently, given the nature of like how slow and how few Uniswap proposals are. I think honestly meeting once every 2 weeks just for everyone to talk about like what are some proposals or temperature checks that we've seen that are interesting to talk about, as well as like are there any proposals that you might have seen on other networks like a compound that might be interoperable here to speak about, is pretty good. But I don't think it needs to be anything too intense. It's just the fee switch is something very contentious, which is why we've been allocating more time towards it than usual.
Got it. Okay, makes sense. I think that, yeah, every other week was kind of like what we had in mind as well. So that's good to hear. And also wanted to say that, this process that we're doing here for Uniswap, we want to replicate that for other DAOs as well. So like Compound, I've planning to do one for Decentraland because I want to get students involved in governance for that. So yeah, I beat you to it, Jake. Jake's like DCL DAO. So if, whatever project you guys are interested in, let us know as well, so that we can set up delegates for that and get involved in governance for that project as well. So tell us your favorite project in the Telegram chat, and we can work with that project to get a delegate for that and get students involved for that. All right, thank you everyone. We can continue conversing in the chat. Really appreciate it, and hope you guys enjoy your weekend.
Awesome. Thank you, everybody.
Bye.